rolling.
Okay, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself first?
Sure. Um, I was born in Virginia, and I went to my first Burning Man in 2016. And I'd worked in tech for about 6 years before that. And then I worked as a land stewardship apprentice at a Zen Buddhist organic farm and for a water nonprofit, and wanted to work in a water and land role, and applied for the job at Fly Ranch. And I've been working at Fly Ranch. I'm the director there, and I've been working there since June of 2017, and I love it.
And why don't you tell us about Fly Ridge?
Sure.
Yeah, because I saw you also study about the land history, right?
Yes, yeah. So Fly Ranch is, all of the Black Rock Desert out here is located on Numu, which is northern Paiute land. And so there are 4 different northern Paiute bands that have direct relationships to this area. The Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe, the Summit Lake tribe, the Yarrington Paiute tribe, and the Fort Bidwell Indian community. And up until the 1850s, people lived freely out here. Colonialism didn't come to this area. There weren't settler colonialists out here until then. And then starting in the 1850s and 60s, people started settling out here. Fly Ranch appeared on a settler map in the 1880s for the first time. It's called Ward's Hot Springs, and then was used for ranching and growing alfalfa. And there was some mining that happened there, and drilling, water extraction, and all of that damaged the land. And then in 2016, Burning Man bought the property, and it's a 3,800 acre property that we are now stewarding.
And why do you think Burning Man needs like a permanent base?
Well, I think that there's so many metaphors that people use for it, that it's the yin to the yang of Black Rock City, and I really think there's a really great balance between them, because Black Rock City is noise and lights and metal, sharp corners, and obviously it's still ecologically important, but there's not the obvious plants and animals there. And being able to steward the land there, I think, gives us a chance to build Burning Man culture for the other 51 weeks, for people to be able to access it easily, and for it to still really feel like Burning Man in terms of the art and the principles, people engaging there, it being a very bottoms-up, community-oriented program. But it lets us build Burning Man culture into something that's still Burning Man, but is permanent in a sense, and is really lets us focus on land stewardship there and taking care of the land as part of what we're doing, because we have more time to do that.
So you think like the two of like Burning Man event and Fly Ranch, their elements are not different, like are not the same, right? But the core value is the same.
Yeah, I think that there's still Burning Man, because what we do here is Black Rock City, and that's Burning Man and sometimes when we call it that, but fundamentally this is Black Rock City, because Burning Man is also the regional events, it's Burners Without Borders, it's all of the ways that the culture has manifest. Obviously Black Rock City is the biggest and most substantial expression of Burning Man culture in the world, and I think and hope that it will always be the center of what we're doing. I think of Black Rock City as kind of the annual convening of Burning Man culture. It's an annual gathering, really, of burners, and but when people come to Fly, it always makes me so happy when people who are there say, "Oh, this is Burning Man," and they recognize the fundamental elements of what we do here at Black Rock City as happening over there. And so that's really important to us, to continue that, of being an expression of Burning Man still, but it's just different. It emerges in the same way that something emerged here, where people came out, they just started doing things, And that emerged into a culture that we validated. And it wasn't until 1997 that the city grid that we use here was actually used for the first time. And Fly's been the same way, where we've just invited people to come out and to have campouts, to place art, to do educational projects, and really supported whatever people in the community say, this is what I want to do.
And can you tell us what's happening out there?
Yeah. We have a couple different avenues that people engage through. So throughout the year, there's a group of people that are there called the Fly Guardians, and they're out there to protect the property. And they make sure that people aren't trespassing and damaging or vandalizing the geyser, because people come from all over the world and show up, and they haven't Googled it, so they just show up and want to access the property. And we're able to accommodate 3 walks a week, where the Friends of the Black Rock runs nature walks that people come from all over the world to come walk the land and be part of it. And then we have some art there that has been placed by different teams, that a lot of it came from Black Rock City, people who have come to us, because whenever people come to us and say, oh, you know what you should do at Fly Ranch, we always say, how can we help you do that? It's not us that's doing it. We support what other people want to do there, and we're a platform. And then the biggest project that we've worked on has been our design challenge, Laggy 2020, where we did an international design challenge that involved 800 people and 10 or 15,000 hours of people coming up with ideas for regenerative solutions for water, power, waste, shelter, and the results were ridiculous. It went so much further than we ever thought it could have. So we're now in a state of talking to the county about how we could get those zoned and permitted, talking to potential sponsors and partners about how we could get those built, and working with the teams on how we could get those built.
And we know like some of the art.
Oh, Starchild. Yeah. Did you guys interview Starchild?
Yeah, yesterday.
Oh yeah, I love Starchild.
Me too.
Yeah.
At first he thought it was a trick, like he hasn't met us yet, so he thought it was like a joke.
This would be a really good, very elaborate joke.
Yeah. I was saying like I know some of the art pieces will go to Fly Ranch after this, like Paradisium.
Yep.
So how do you choose like which art piece go to Fly Ranch? Is there some kind of circus?
We have a pretty open process where everything that we've done has really been people write a proposal and say, this is something I'd like to do, or this is something I think Fly Ranch should do. And then the Fly Ranch working group looks at it, which is 6 or 7 people who are involved. And then we have a Slack channel that we share that with, and Facebook groups. And really, by the time people have gone through that process and hundreds of people have seen any given proposal, it's usually pretty obvious if it's a good idea or not. We don't really need to make a decision a lot of the times, because it's pretty obvious both for us and for the person who wants to do that thing whether it's a good idea or not. So the Fly Ranch Perg is a snail, and that's something that we're going to have at Fly Ranch now. That's one of the art projects here. Charismatic Metafauna built a medical replica of this snail. There's a snail that only lives at Fly Ranch. It's an endangered freshwater snail called the Fly Ranch Perg. It's tiny. It's the size of a period on a screen. It's unbelievably small. And it only lives at Fly Ranch in one pool. And so Charismatic Metafauna wanted to build a rendering, a much larger version of it that they're going to bring over there. And so that's really just gone through the same thing, where someone says they have an idea, they want to do something at Fly, we ask them how we can support them, and that's what we do. So it's really, we've focused a lot on how to be an open source platform, where everything we do is in the open, it's transparent, anyone can participate and collaborate. We try and share as much information as possible so that people can genuinely participate, because I think a lot of times if you have information disparity, like if I know more than people who want to do things at Fly, they can't propose good ideas because they're not able to propose things that are in scope. So we try and share as much as we can so people can always have good ideas and be able to join what we're doing.
And because our film is about sustainability,
Yeah.
but I feel like this event is probably not the best example to talk about it because it's designed for a week. So what's your point of view on this?
Yeah, so I've been intimately involved with Burning Man's 2030 sustainability roadmap, and I think we have the most ambitious goals in the world. Really, I think we do, of the scale of climate change and the problem of climate change is not going to be solved by simply trying to do less harm, which is what I think most people's sustainability goals, most companies, their goals are about how to do less harm. But we need a fundamentally different system because we have to undo harm that's been happening to the environment for hundreds of years, really since the Industrial Revolution. And so, as you said, it's only for a week, but I think that in a sense is an advantage for us because we don't have legacy infrastructure that we have to change up. We can do Black Rock City differently every year. And so if we can figure out how to be a model city here, then people can bring that back to wherever they're coming from to advocate for different ways of doing things in their homes. And so we have committed as an organization to be regenerative so that we are a net ecological positive contribution to the world, to be carbon negative through legitimate carbon dioxide removal because we need to remove trillions of tons of carbon dioxide from the environment, and to handle all waste ecologically so that we're doing landfill diversion and aren't making any contributions. And when we committed to those goals in 2019, I think it really it was great. You know, it's incredibly ambitious, but it's also almost as much as we need to be doing as a species in order for us to survive. And Burning Man is a place that's so innovative and where people are able to try anything out and see if it works or not, that I think the possibility of us having a real breakthrough here is substantial. So I think that, yes, there is a lot of waste here now, and there's a lot of emissions, there's a lot of gas that gets used, but I've already seen that starting to change with all the solar on Playa, all the new solar assets that have been brought out here, the ways that people are approaching their waste streams, the way that theme camps are working around it. And if we can do it as Burning Man, then all of the regionals can do it in their own countries. All these people can bring this back. And so really for me, that's the reason I want to work at Burning Man, is I think it's the best place in the world to work on sustainability.
Yeah. And there's also like, in the reality, maybe some people, they don't have the resource to do like renewable energy or, you know, like even got really well educated
Yes.
about this.
Yes.
What kind of advice you will give to these people for how to raise the awareness in
Yes.
general?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're talking about, you know, there's so many pieces to what you've mentioned there, where solar is, you know, often expensive and complex. And then there's just informing people about emissions and their options. And so I think I, as an individual, think about how I can share as much information as possible and support projects. I think that the availability of deployable solar has dramatically changed in the past few years. We have solar trailers that we use now that are solar mobile assets that did not exist 4 or 5 years ago. You could not get those. Because I think that in order for us to genuinely get off of fossil fuel use here and to stop using generators, we will need something that is almost as easy as generators for people to plug into, because not every camp is going to be able to have an electrical engineer. But we also need to reduce our overall energy use and not buy things that we know are going to end up in a landfill. And that's a consumer-based decision. And then you need infrastructure-based decisions. And for the city out here, you know, I think there's the possibility that we could build enough solar or wind or geothermal resources around this area that we could provide 20 megawatts for the city and have a genuine electrical grid that the city runs on here, so people wouldn't need to bring out generators or their own assets. That is obviously an incredibly controversial idea that lots of people would not agree with. But I think that the advantage that we have is that people are so innovative and that we have 7 or 8 more burns to test this out every year and to get better and better at it.
He says he hasn't, he just forgot it.
And also after 3-year pause,
Yes.
the pandemic, like what do you feel about this burn? And also, is it like physical? Is the physical burn necessary in your opinion? Because you can also do the virtual work.
Yeah, I mean, I think that to your first part of your question, I think that this year is really hard for everyone. We're out of practice at how to socialize and how to be around people. I think we probably all need a lot of therapy to get over the trauma of the past few years and to remember what it's like to feel safe again. I still feel that, I still need time to recover because it still hasn't felt safe and society hasn't felt, in a place where it feels okay to heal. And I think that we all need that. And so I think that that's what Burning Man really provides at a fundamental level, is an opportunity to heal and to come back together. And so my view for this burn was, let's just try and make it work at a basic level. I think that it's so easy to want to do big things out here, but we really just need to do simple things and see if we can still do it. And I think that, yes, virtual and hybrid events are amazing, and we saw so much creativity happen with the virtual burns and all of that stuff, but there's just no replacement for the real person-to-person connection that you get in your life in general. And I think that since Burning Man is so much about bringing down barriers and being able to communicate with people as your authentic higher self, you just can't replace that in-person gathering. I do think that from the sustainability perspective, taking that time off both hurt us because we didn't get to do Burning Man again and again, but it also was a pause that let us sit back and think a little bit and to think about why we're doing what we're doing and what we're doing. Because in a normal year, you go to the burn, you're tired until November, you take space until March or April, and then you're back in it again. And you're planning and packing and getting things. And so we published the sustainability roadmap in 2019, a month before the burn started. And people didn't even know about it when we came to the event that year. But it was there, and we had committed to it. And a couple hundred people had been involved in that process and knew about it. But we've got hundreds of thousands of people in the global Burning Man community. And so to see the difference from 2019 until now, where so many people know about the sustainability goals and the sustainability roadmap, I mean, that's the first problem we had to solve, was just getting that information to people and convincing them that that was a real thing we were going to do and that it was a credible commitment on our part. And so we've been able to do that for the past few years and had calls with hundreds of people on them on Zooms and thousands of people watching and people talking about this from all over the world, so that now when we come out here, I've been amazed and delighted at how many solar arrays that I've seen out here and how much people are talking about battery technology. But I think that we also have to be careful, because the big lie that energy companies have told us is you can still have it all. We can still have everything that we have now, and that's going to work. But that's not true. Mining for batteries is incredibly extractive from lithium, and Thacker Pass up here is a great example of that, where there's always a habitat trade-off. Mining for rare earth metals, silicon, all of these things that we have to extract from the earth to make new infrastructure. Drilling for geothermal creates problems. All the steel and metal that goes into windmills. And so really, I think the bigger thing we have to talk about is accepting that we are going to have to do less. As Burning Man, as a species, as people, that we simply are going to need to consume fewer things and be okay with less energy, because there's just not enough silicon and lithium and all the things that we would need to build in order to have all the power that we use now, and to be able to, flush off all the water that we have now, and to deal with all of the waste that we have now. There's not enough space for all the landfills that we need to have. So I think there's a more fundamental shift where we have to realize that we just need to do less. We need to buy less, we need to consume less, we need to use less energy, and we just can't have everything that we have now. And that's really hard and it's really sad. And I think climate change is going to force that realization on us and either make us do that because society isn't going to be able to function anymore, or we're going to accept that and change and make that change before it gets too far in that we can't make those decisions ourselves. And that scares me. I think about this all the time and it's really hard for me, but I really hope that we are able to make those choices before they are made for us in ways that make being a human extraordinarily unpleasant.
It's not easy to do in a consumerism-driven
No,
society.
it's very difficult.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what's your personal interpretation of this year's theme, Waking Dream?
Oof. I am a terrible person to ask about themes. I feel like I think that what we're doing out here always feels like a waking dream to me anyways. It always feels like a lucid dream to be out here, and reality feels so bendy. So to me, it's kind of like Burning Man as you experience it, described as you already know it, which is this weird otherworldly experience that always makes me wonder, like, is this a total fabrication that's a made up thing that we do, or is this what my life could be like all the time? And that's what I think about when I have dreams too. And that's what I think about out here all the time too, is could we actually live at this level of connection and interdependence and connectivity with people all the time? Or is this only possible because people spend 8 months and tens of millions of dollars and lots of planning to make it so this week is possible as it is?
Yeah, because you are also working for the org, like
The org, yes.
So it feels kind of weird, like you jump from this work to here. Does it feel really different?
Yes and no. I think that, I know a lot of the people who work here, and so from that standpoint, it feels very similar. I think the difference is in working here, out on the event, there's just so many people here. And, I live out here 6 or 8 months a year, and there's never anyone here. And so it's always weird to start seeing hundreds and then thousands of people coming out here and to just think, where did all these people come from? But I love being able to be part of what we're doing and to support the city, because all the water that we spray on the streets here comes from Fly Ranch. So we spray 18 million gallons of water to do dust abatement on the streets here, and that's my job for Black Rock City. That's what I do to contribute here. And it's hard, it's a lot of work, but the teams that manage that are wonderful and are really doing the hard work that goes with it. And so I like to be able to be part of that. It is overwhelming to have so many people out here though.
Can you tell us more about the water that you were just mentioned? I
Yes.
thought they were like fresh, from somewhere.
Yeah, so Fly Ranch has an abundance of water that's there. Over time though, that water will become less and less available because people out here talk about being in a drought or a long drought or a bad drought. And this isn't a drought, this is aridification, which is the process of a region becoming more and more dry over time. And so it's not a drought when it's a permanent shift in how something operates. And so when aquifers aren't replenished in urban areas, and when water is piped from one state to the other, when interbasin transfers happen, we don't have a natural process for water to refill itself and repopulate the aquifers. So at Fly, we have 150 hot and cold springs that are there, 3 reservoirs that have a large amount of water in them, and then the geyser that's putting water out 24 hours a day, and then 7 different water rights claims that we have for the property for the artesian wells that are there that we use to irrigate or to water for the cows, because we graze 150 cows at Fly Ranch as well. We're primarily a working ranch. We have cattle that are there, we graze them, we have fences, we do all the things that a ranch does. And that's really the biggest part of what we do. And I think that's important. And then we have other water rights claims, but yeah, the water that we put on the streets here at Burning Man has been coming from Fly Ranch for decades. We just bought it from the previous owner. And so now that we own Fly Ranch, we are able to use that water here with knowledge that we'll be able to continue to use that water.
Is there other way for the burners to engage with Fly Ranch apart from nature walks or like building art pieces there?
We have campouts that people come to, that where we do like the Burners Without Borders summits that we have out there. We have work weekends that we do and stewardship days, where once a month, our general thing has been to do something for a year or two and try and get really good at it. And so we've done that with the Guardians program, we've done that with the nature walks, and we've done that with work campouts, where we've had 56 campouts at Fly Ranch that people have come out to work on things, to steward the land, to learn. And then we have stewardship days once a month that we hope to make much more often, where anyone can come out, sign up online, come out for the day. If you're running a team, spend the night, and people work for 5 or 6 hours. We make a communal meal together and then have that, and then we soak in the hot springs. And those are open to anyone. And so people can come out to those and spend time in the desert. And those are, I hope that we do them more and more often so that we can be genuinely available for people to be able to come out all the time. Because I think we're getting closer and closer to the real kind of underlying dream a lot of people had about Fly Ranch, which is a permanent, continuous, year-round, sustainable burn. That's really the dream, I think, for a lot of people in some form or another. There were 550 people involved with the Fly Ranch purchase when Fly Ranch was bought. And so all 550 of those people have a different opinion about what we should be doing. And then there are thousands of people who have come out every year since then who all have their own opinions as well. And so really when, I'll say to you kind of what we were talking about earlier, which is how do you think that we should be letting burners engage beyond the things that we're doing now? And if you would like to organize a thing to let people engage in that way, I will help you do that.
Because I feel like it's still kind of a mystery place for many people. I mean, some people heard about it, but they're not sure like what it is about, what they're doing out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like the sustainability stuff we were talking about, it takes a couple years for things to really penetrate the collective consciousness of burners. And so some people who've been really involved could tell you more about Fly than I could and what we're doing there. Some people still have just heard that we bought it. The most important thing that we've done, I think, around information is we have a website, flyranch.org, where we've put hundreds of documents and articles and maps and pictures and all of that so that anyone who wants to can inform themselves about it and get involved. Because I think the most important part of us for our work is to steward the land and help people get involved. And so that just really means sharing as much information as possible and supporting people in the projects that they want to do there.
Anything else you would like to add?
Yeah, I have pitched this before to people, which is an answer to your question about burning the man or not. And I've told this to people and I'll tell it to you. People talk about whether we should be burning art or not at all out here. And I think that simplifies the question, because I think really what we should be doing is doing a great job at asking the question, how can we be doing this in a way that's better for the earth? And how can we be doing this in a way that's sustainable and conscientious of the land that we're stewarding out here? So if we wanted to burn the man in a way that was good for the earth, we could do that. Here's one way that could happen that no one else agrees on, which is you build a hole, you dig a hole behind where the man is when you put it up. And you have a tarp that's inside that hole, or some kind of effective means of preventing the playa from getting scalded. So you can have burn tarps and all kinds of stuff like that. You start the burn, you have cables that are attached to the man. You pull the man down as it's burning. Then you douse it with urine from the burn here, because that helps the wood sequester more carbon. Then you bury it and wait. And then you take it out and you have made biochar. And then you grind that up into chips. You could bury it at Fly Ranch or other land around here that people are using as farming, and that sequesters carbon back into the soil. You farm with that, and you bring the food back out here and you feed people with the food that you've grown from that. That's an incredibly complex idea that lots of people would have objections to, but fundamentally, from an ecological perspective, that would work. Whether it would work from a political or legal or practical perspective is another question, but I think it gets to what I think we need to ask ourselves, which is not should we do this or should we do that, but how can we be regenerative at a broad level and make new systems and ways of approaching everything we do, instead of just nitpicking for little ways of doing less harm. How can we do good at a genuine scale that takes advantage of, and for Burning Man to be doing the awesome stuff that we do here, what if we were doing that awesome stuff in service to the earth and in service to combating climate change and to giving people a new way of living? And that's what I really care about.
Today we were talking with Sin.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, she said
wants
she's
to plant
gonna
some
do
trees.
that. Yeah, I
Mhm.
think that's a really good idea too.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. I'll tell you one more story. When I started working at Burning Man, I got to meet Larry Harvey a couple times, but I only got to talk to him in depth once. And when I applied for the job, they told me to write a roadmap for what I would do here. And I had been a product manager before this, working in tech, and I'd worked at Facebook and a data science company, and so roadmaps are what I did. So I wrote an 18 or 20 page roadmap and sent it in as my job application. And after I got my job and started, Larry had written a bunch of notes in the margins of it. He printed it out, gave it to me, and one of the things that was in there, he had a lot of things, but one of the things was that he wanted me to report to him. I talked to my manager, Marion, about that, and she said, you need to talk to Larry about that. And so I set up time to talk to Larry, and we had lunch and talked a little bit. And then he said he had to go, and he said I should come over to his house in San Francisco. And I brought this list of questions I wanted to ask him. What quarterly metrics was I going to be evaluated on? And, what were my, what goals would he have for me? Because I'd had normal jobs before this. I worked for a law firm and I worked for tech companies. And so it was very organized. And so I kept trying to say, well, yeah, what do you want me to do about this? And what are my metrics? And, how would you think about budget? And all of these questions. And he wanted to talk about art and Japanese tea gardens and the history of the Black Rock Desert and the history of Burning Man. And so we ended up talking for 5 hours. And he was, as he always did, was chain smoking the whole time and just, talking. And I would say things occasionally. He would ask me things, but mostly he was telling me things. And I kept, every 45 minutes, I'd say, I love that so much. Can you just tell me what you want me to do? Because when I started my job here, there was no clear sense of, oh, this is what we need to do, this is what we should do or shouldn't do. And so eventually, after 5 hours, I said, I'm really tired. I need to go eat and go to the bathroom. Can you tell me just one thing that you want me to do so that I know what I should do? And he thought about it for a second and he said, yeah, why don't you take people on walks? And if that goes well, plant trees. And that's what we're doing. Yes, I am. Yes.
Very official.
So that's what we're doing. And that's what Sin is doing, is we've been doing walks. We've done hundreds of walks. I don't even want to throw out a number, but probably 700 or 800 walks, public walks. And those have gone well. And now we want to plant trees. And that's the next step. And I think that there was something really salient about Larry saying that. And yeah, I just wish I could have talked to him more. But that's always felt really important to me to do because it was something that he said I should do. And so I've always really wanted to do that. And so what Sin's doing feels really cool to me because it's the next step in what we're doing of planting trees now that we did the walks.
In 2016, we invited David Best to Nepal.
Cool.
And we built like a small temple structure with the ruin from the earthquake.
Yep.
So Larry was there.
Oh, cool.
And he was like picking up small pieces.
Oh, cool.
Smoking.
Yes.
it.
Always.
And then-
Always.
But I feel like he observed every like very tiny details.
Yes.
And then-
Incredibly observant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he will come up with some really sounds very simple but like really interesting ideas.
Yes.
That you can really like do them. In the
Yeah.
field.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever heard people refer to him as the original instigator, but that's something that people say about him was he didn't manage things but he instigated. He would plant little ideas with people of, what if we did that? Or what if we tried that out? And that was really something I feel like he was good at, was he would just plant a little idea with people and then they would take it and run with it. And he was, he'd show up and smoke a cigarette and say, oh, yeah, like that, what if we did this next time? And then they did try that next time. So I really love that we call him that, because, founder, it doesn't, it's such a normal word for what he did. But I love when people call him the original instigator, because that feels to me like what he did.
Okay. Anything else?
That's all I got for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.